Hi, welcome to How to Modify for Pregnancy. So you're pregnant, what to do in public classes. I created this video so that those of us who do go to vinyasa yoga, we know how to modify, we know how to take care of ourselves. So the first and most important rule of all of this is listen to your own body. Every pregnancy is so different in every body, so the things that I'm going to offer today may or may not work for you. So the offering as you try all these out is, how does this feel in my body? Does it work for me? Your body will tell you, so just take this opportunity to quite simply close your eyes and listen. And may you have as smooth of a pregnancy as you can. And also may you keep moving through it. Sun salutations. How do we do them? How do we move through them? Because it's one breath, one movement, and the class is going at its pace. So what do I do for myself? So I thought I would go through a couple of the different poses that I modify for. And again, try them out. If they work, great. And if not, no problem. So the biggest thing that happens in the standing forward fold is we're generally told feet hip width apart or big toes touching. But as pregnant women, we actually need to take our feet outer hip width apart, and then the more belly you get, the wider you need to take your feet out. So how I started it generally was I went outer hip width apart, and now as I'm growing bigger, I take my feet even wider. So the idea is that as I bow forward, I got lots of room for my belly. So those would be one of the first things that I would check out. The next thing that I would check out, at least for me, and if you have any nausea, see I'm already out of breath. If you have any nausea that's happening for you that day, I find that putting my head below my heart just kind of adds to that nausea. So what I've been doing generally in forward fold is I prop my forearms on top of my thighs and keep my knees bent. And this is what my forward fold looks like with a rounded spine. And then when you go into Ardha Uttanasana into flat back, just lengthen the spine from here. Another great way to do it is with blocks, especially if resting the forearms feels like just a little too much. I'm even going to take my feet wider. I'd put my hands on the blocks in front, and when I'm in a forward fold, I'd round the spine here. And then again in flat back, lengthen the spine. And at least for me, I find bending my knees in forward fold is way easier and gives my lower back and my SI a bit of space, my lower back a bit of space. So feel it out for yourself. Next part is when we're going back into a lunge pose, especially the bigger you get, if your front knee is directly in front of your pelvis, it's going to not have a lot of room for the belly. So what I found for my own body is that I actually step my front foot out towards the side so that I've got room for my belly, and then reach the arms up from here. Taking the hands down when you're going into down dog, you can either just quite simply step back, or I found the other way to do it is from the lunge, put the back knee down on the ground, step the right knee to meet the left knee, and then from there, curl the toes under and lift the hips up to the sky. And that's been a little bit more easier for me in terms of the transition, so you can check it out for yourself. Next part is plank pose. If you're newer to plank, right, or again, you're starting to feel the weight of your belly depending on how big your baby is at this point, just put your knees on the ground. I put my knees on the ground all the time. I pretty much have been doing it since trimester 1. Just again, to work on kind of puffing up my back body without adding too much weight. So you can keep your knees on the ground. The vinyasa is the hardest one to kind of figure out how do we modify for that, because again, we move through so quickly. So I'm going to show you 3 different ways of taking the vinyasa. And then again, you play with them depending upon how strong or how amazing you're feeling that day. Let's just say that, yeah? So from down dog, we usually do plank pose, chaturanga, upward dog, downward dog. So one way that I like to do it where you can keep with the breath is you inhale into plank, knees on the ground. Exhale, slide the hands towards you. Take your hands to your lower back. As you inhale, camel, and it's not a deep camel. I'd recommend really keeping your hands on your lower back. The idea is we don't want to put too much stretch in the belly, but we want to open up the chest. So I usually just stay here, lift the chest up. That's the inhale. That's when our friends would be in cobra, upward dog. And then as we exhale, we go into down dog by going in with them. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it, if I'm feeling stronger that day, is I put my knees down on the ground. I inhale into plank pose with everybody. Exhale, I lower down halfway on my knees. And then from there, I bring my thighs to the ground, but not my belly, keeping my elbows bent, and lift the chest up. From here, I don't really try to bring my shoulders closer together behind. I think of this more as a side waist opener, and I usually like to wiggle side to side. You can kind of feel that out in your own body, yeah? And then the next one, if you're feeling tired that day, is coming forward, plank pose, lower the knees, come into child's pose, right? Inhale into cat pose, angry cat, and then exhale, down dog. That was a lot of information, so I'm going to go through it again just to give you the options. So the first option I went through was inhale into plank with knees on the ground. Exhale, slide hands towards you, stand up on your knees. Hands to lower back, inhale. Ustrasana, camel pose, again, but just a soft one. Exhale, down dog. Hands out in front of you, hips up to the sky behind you. Second option, inhale into plank, knees lower. Exhale, lower down, chaturanga on the knees. Inhale, cobra pose. And again, it's a cobra where your pelvis doesn't come down to the ground. And personally, I like to do a little wiggle in this one. And again, the idea is not really a back bend, but a stretch on either side of the belly, which feels, at least for me, really good. And then we'll exhale, down dog. Last one, this is the one that I recommend, especially when you're feeling tired, is inhale into plank pose. Exhale, child's pose, knees wide for space for the belly. Inhale, come into angry cat, round the spine. Exhale, down dog, hips up to the sky. You can also just go into child's pose and chill. And remember that the biggest thing I find, at least for me in the practice, especially in public classes, is to really take my time. So do your best, yeah? Okay, other options. So from there, inhaling and right leg goes up to the sky usually. If that feels like too much for me that day, I come onto hands and knees, and I do it from hands and knees. So I take the knee and the leg out behind me, and then I walk my right hand out towards the left, and then step the right foot forward. Arms would go up to the sky for a low lunge. Exhale, hands to the ground. You can also put your hands on blocks. Step forward. Inhale into a flat back. Again, you can put your hands on the blocks or hands on thighs. And then exhale, round the spine and bow. Inhale, you'd stand up, sweep the arms overhead, and exhale, hands in prayer. Couple options for chair twist, because we do a lot of them in Vinyasa yoga. And I'll show you 2 ways of doing it depending upon how it checks out in your own body. And again, I love playing with them. It's kind of super fun. I found pregnancy to be kind of a fun time to explore what works in my body and what doesn't, yeah? So my feet would be nice and wide. I'd come into chair pose, right? Classically, our hands would be in prayer, and then we would twist over to one side. We don't generally recommend deep twisting, and more so than anything, it's just because we don't have space for the belly. So 2 ways of doing it is you'd grab a block and you'd put it forward from your feet, so you'd essentially create a triangle. Left hand would come onto the block, and then right hand can either come to the right hip, and then you roll the chest open from here, or you'd reach the right arm up towards the sky. So that's option 1. Option 2 is you'd come into it in a squat position. So what I do is, if I know that they're going into chair twist, I come into malasana, into squat, with or without the block. I start here or here. Right, arms overhead, you can kind of, again, feel it out for how you are doing that day. And then when they twist, if I'm twisting to the right, I'd bring my left hand down, out and over to the left, and I'd reach my right arm up to the sky. And then if you do have a binding practice, those of us who have been practicing a while, your right hand can come behind you by your left bum, left arm comes around, and then you could wrap your arms around yourself and take it like that, right? Arms up, or hands on thigh. Always great alternatives. So those are what I would do with that kind of twist. Now, lunge twist. What do we do there, right? All the twisting that we love to do in yoga. So I'm going to step my left foot back, right foot back, just kidding, and then lower the knee to the ground. So generally, again, when we do this in class, right, we take the elbow to the outside of the knee. So a couple options. The first option is to stay more upright. So when you know that they're twisting, you slide your front foot further back, knee and ankle stack, and you might want to put padding underneath your back knee. And then you take your left hand, whichever leg is forward, you take that hand behind you by your sacrum. And then you would take your right hand to the outside of your left thigh. You'd inhale and lift the chest up. And then you'd exhale and twist. So we can stay more upright. Inhale, lift, exhale and twist. Biggest thing with twisting, it's so good for your spine. You just want to kind of play with how much is it pulling in my belly. The idea is you want to feel a stretch without strain, as we always talk about in pretty much every yoga. And so the biggest thing I'm checking in with is, does this create any strain in my belly? I want to feel my spine getting a good stretch and the muscles around it without putting too much pressure on my little belly, on my baby, yeah? So I'd lifting up. So this would be option 1, or krama 1. Krama 2 is you'd keep that front foot further forward, grab a block on any height, put it underneath your opposite hand. So my left foot is forward, my right hand will be on that block, and then I'll reach my left arm up to the sky. And even now I feel like I need more room for my belly, so I'd even walk my left foot out to the left a bit more and lift the arm up. So those would be 2 options that I would do for twisting. And again, just check in with your own body. So those are some options for twists that you can do when we are in the standing series. Now in the seated series, we do seated spinal twist, reclined spinal twist. So I think I would just keep going with the twists and offer you those options. So generally when we twist, right, we would twist generally towards the right first, so the left foot would be forward, right foot would be bent, or right knee would be bent, and classically I'd be twisting in this direction. But what we're going to do, again, because we just want space for the belly, is we can keep the same shape. But instead of twisting to the right, I'm going to wrap my right arm around my right shin, take my left hand behind, and twist from here. And again, for us, it's really about lengthening and just a soft twist from the outer ribs and twisting from there. Sometimes I find this position's a little too much, so the other way that I like to do it is with Baddha Konasana feet instead. It keeps me more upright, and I think that the bigger that I get, I'm probably going to start rounding a bit more. So this just gives me space to come forward and be on my booty, on my sit bones. So same idea, I would take my left hand behind, right hand to the outside of the thigh, and gently twist from there. And then from here, we'd come back to center, sweet little counter twist in the opposite direction. Then the last variation of the twist is reclined spinal twist. And so what that'll look like, I like to do it with a block, is you would lie down, and with or without a block, you can kind of see how this feels. Scoot over towards the right if you're going to take your knees over to the left. And then I would take my knees to the left, arms out into a T. And I find for me, I need to keep my knees further away from my arm just so that it doesn't create too deep of a twist. Generally, when your knees are closer up towards your upper arm, the deeper the twist. And again, you play with it in your own body. The other way that I like to do it is actually open the legs and still put a block underneath my right knee, just to allow my leg to be supported. Again, sideways stretching is really, really good for us. We just need to be mindful of how much we're pulling in the abdomen area. Inversions, a very controversial topic in the yoga community. The biggest rule of thumb is if you weren't doing it before you were pregnant, don't start now. So if you were not doing inversions, handstand, forearm stand, headstand, all those things before you're pregnant, now is not the time to try. Try it when you had your baby and you've come back into your power, and then try new things. But during your pregnancy, stick with what you know, because your body has amazing muscle memory. So that being said, 2 schools of thought are you don't do inversions your whole entire pregnancy, and the second school of thought is do inversions in the second trimester, so after you kind of get through the precarious time. And then the third school of thought is if you did it before, you can do it now. My biggest advice to you is feel it out. For me, it didn't feel good in my first trimester to do anything upside down or to do anything too strenuous. I was just really, really tired. But I had friends who were pregnant and did it all the way through, no problem. So feel it out is the biggest thing. And really listen to your body and observe when you're about to do something, am I doing this because I want to do this, or am I doing this because I want to prove something to myself? And that's just an honest question to kind of feel out for yourself. So what I was doing during the first trimester when inversions were happening is I would explore doing them in different planes. And so when they were asking for handstand, I would do downward dog. Or another thing that you can do is kind of a standing forward fold with blocks, right? So you do a standing split instead. So you're up a little bit higher. And so if people were going to come forward into a handstand, I would come forward here, and then I would work on strengthening my back. That is one of the biggest things that we can do as pregnant ladies, is to strengthen the back. It's going to prepare us for holding our child, as well as preparing all the weight that's about to come through as their bellies get bigger. So I would have essentially a standing split into warrior 3. So leg would go out behind you, right? Blocks would go underneath the shoulders, and I'd reach the chest forward, and you can even play with coming up on fingertips, and then you're like, woo, that's juicy, right? And then you should feel your back strengthening. So those would be things that I would do in the inversion practice. And then with forearm stand, what I did instead was on a hatha asana, heart pose, with blocks or without. You can put the 2 blocks together. Elbows stack on top of the blocks, elbows closer than shoulder width, hands in prayer, and then you take your knees out behind you and bow forward, tilting your booty up to the sky. Wonderful opening in the side waist as well as in the shoulders. And again, you feel it out for yourself, what works for my body. For shoulder stand, I did Viparita Karani, so block under bum, legs up to the sky. And with headstand, I just didn't do that. We have a lot of relaxin moving through the body, and they say that they're relaxing, especially in the neck, so we just want to be mindful of how much pressure we put there. What do we do when everybody lies down on their belly? I feel like a lot of pregnant goddesses kind of either sit up or lie down on their back. And again, I always tell our pregnant goddesses, do what you want, but back strengthening is actually amazing for us. As I was saying earlier in terms of the inversion practice, when we strengthen our back, it helps to support what's happening in front of us, and then it also prepares us for holding our babe once the babe comes. So what I've found in my own body is I've started doing a lot of the back strengthening, but I do it from child's pose because I can't lie on my belly anymore. So taking the knees out to the side, when everybody would lie down on their belly, I would come down into this position. And so if they were doing finger stand cobra, right, hands out to the side, I would bring my fingers out to the sides, and I'd be super light on them. So already, right where I am, I can feel that I have to engage my back to support me. And then from here, I'd do the finger stand cobra, lifting and arcing and coming back down again. And then if I wanted to challenge myself when I was feeling good, you can lift the hands up off the ground and then do it this way. And I'm like, woo, that is definitely strengthening my back. Same idea with Shalambhasana with locust pose. When they're coming into it, come on to hands and knees, and you can do it all from tabletop position. So when you hear them say lift your legs, when you hear the teacher say lift your legs up off the ground, I usually do one leg. So I'd lift one leg up off the ground. And the thing to check out is hug the belly button in, right? And the idea of hugging, you're not squeezing, it's just a gentle hug in so that I create a long back, specifically lower back. And then if I want to up the ante, then the opposite arm would go out in front, and I would reach. And then I'm like, yep, everything in my back body is working. Come down, and then if they were to do it again, I would change sides. So just lifting the left leg up, lower the outer left hip, and again, just gently puff up the back body with your breath. And you can always stay here. Again, on my days when I'm tired, I just chill. Or you can reach the other arm out in front, and you lengthen in both directions. So those would be things that I would do with Shalambhasana with locust pose. Another way that I'd do it if my legs were feeling tired is I would do it all on just sitting on my shins. Toes curled under, for me, I like it so I stretch the arches of the feet. But you can also, if that ever feels like too much, just put blocks in between your legs and sit on it. So a couple ways to strengthen the back when they're doing it on their bellies is lean forward so you're on a diagonal. And then if they're doing the Shalambhasana where the arms are by the sides, then I take them by my sides as well. I lift them up, and then I lift the chest. And you can explore quite simply lowering and lifting, and you'll kind of find your own edge. There's my edge. Now I can feel my back. I'm coming down. And I'm not going into a rounded spine. I'm keeping the spine long, but I'm essentially just accentuating the upper spine. Other way I love to do it is arms out to the sides. This ups the ante quite a bit, so feel it out for your own body. And then lift your elbows up, and then you'll be like, woo, those are my rhomboids, which are your mid-back muscles, kind of hugging the shoulder blades in. And then you can explore straightening the arms and bending them out to the sides. And again, this is such good work for us. So the one thing you want to be mindful of is, am I sticking my ass out behind, right? Keep your sit bones, keep your lower back reaching directly down towards the ground on a diagonal so that the lower back stays long. This is where mirrors can be really helpful. So you want to watch that out for yourself so that you're not dropping those front ribs. Keep the spine long, and the idea is you should feel it in the upper back as you're doing it. I'm already out of breath. So just be mindful of doing enough, but not to the point of exhaustion, especially again in that first trimester. Your body's working really hard. Generally in the second trimester, you're feeling a bit stronger. For some of us, that may or may not happen, and so be easy with your body and see how it goes. And then the last thing I thought we'd go over today is Shavasana, is corpse pose. There'll come a time when lying on your back doesn't feel so good. And I find that is, again, very different for everybody. And so a couple options that you can do is you can lie on your side. And I usually like to do this with 2 blocks. I'll put 1 block in between my thighs and then 1 block underneath my head. Arm goes out to the side, and then I would rest my head on the block. If you're fortunate enough to have a bolster, you can also put a bolster here and put your arm on a bolster. And if not, then what I usually do is just take my top arm and either rest it right on my top side waist, or sometimes I just bring my fingertips to the ground. And the reason being is I find if my arm kind of comes down like this, it starts to create a little bit of discomfort in my shoulder. So I find, again, either fingertips directly in front of my belly or arm on its side, then it works. If you're getting, or not if, when you're getting bigger, the other thing that I find is sometimes the stomach feels like it's floating and it kind of creates a bit of pressure. You can grab a blanket or one of those chip blocks, those thin blocks, and put it underneath your belly just so your belly can rest, especially again in your third trimester. You're going to have quite a bit of weight here, and lying on the side isn't going to feel so good. The other way that you can do this is with 2 blocks underneath the back of the heart and the head. You can kind of play with what this looks like. If you're fortunate to have a bolster would do the same thing. And your legs would go straight out in front of you. And then one bolster will be underneath the back of the heart, and the other bolster will be underneath the head. And that idea is that your head is above your heart, which generally makes it a little bit easier to lie on your back, and then arms by your sides. So that's just a couple tips. I'll have more tips as I keep going, but I'm hoping that that'll help empower you to be able to still take class, either in public settings or on the site. One thing I would recommend is if you are in a public class, just let your teacher know that you're pregnant, and I would recommend going somewhere in the back of the room so that if you need to pee, because I find we need to pee more, or if you need to have a snack, or you need to not do what's happening in the room, it'll just be easier for you to be in your own space. If you have any questions or requests, send them my way. I'm always open to sharing more insight or getting into something you might be into. Namaste. If you like that video, you'll probably like these. And if you want more videos, go to my membership site. Either way, let's stay connected.